We don't know when we're living through history until we read about it years down the line. From the advent of viral video to today's constantly evolving feed of information, we've seen it all change the way we live and talk and think. The brave new frontier of the internet provided many with opportunities beyond their wildest hopes and dreams. And Five Nights at Freddy's is a good example of this. A small effort by an aspiring developer, at his wit's end, at precisely the perfect moment that changed his life forever. Originally, I wanted to make an analysis of what makes Five Nights at Freddy's so good. I recently played it for the first time on stream, without knowing anything about it beforehand. However, the more I actually researched about the game and its origins, the more I identified with Scott's origins. I could go on and on about the wonderful community of Five Nights at Freddy's, the deep lore, and all of the fan theories that the game has surrounding it. But we would be here for literal hours if I did that. And I have like 15 minutes here at best. So I settled on two things I wanted to answer with this video. The first question is, what makes Five Nights at Freddy's so good? And the second question is, what's the story behind the creator? Behind Scott Cawthon. Much like I wasn't expecting to be so scared playing Five Nights at Freddy's, I also wasn't expecting to find one of the most inspirational stories I've ever heard. So buckle in and get comfy, because we're going to explore not only what Five Nights at Freddy's gets so right, but we're also going to be touching on the story of Scott Cawthon, the creator of the franchise. But first, if you enjoy horror content and analysis videos, you are going to love it here. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It's free, doesn't cost you a dime. If you like the video, make sure that you go ahead and you like the video. And if you have anything to add to the conversation, as always, the comment section is a discussion point for all of us to get together and talk about things. I always check and respond to as many comments as I can. Without further ado, let's ride. Scott Cawthon was born on June 4th, 1978 in Houston, Texas. He had an interest in game development from an early age. When he was 13, his mom bought him a program called Click and Play. For those that don't know, Click and Play is essentially a game creation tool that allows the user to make a simple game without writing a single line of code. Now, we don't know exactly when his career in game development began, but most sources put it towards the mid-90s. After attending the Art Institute of Houston, Scott would go on to make his first official releases. At the time, he was working odd jobs such as Dollar General and Target, and as many of you might know, retail generally doesn't paint a good picture for one's future. So in many ways, the stakes of making it as a game developer were all he had. It's hard to find sources on his family life, but if the dates line up correctly, at the same time he was also starting a family of his own. This would add financial pressures to him every time he would release a game. So the first of his releases was a side-scrolling Metroidvania titled Bogart. Eventually he would move into JRPG territory with a game called Legacy of Flan. While I have not played these games, I have watched playthroughs on YouTube. The games are very ambitious. They want to tell a large-scale, sweeping, epic story, but the core experience can feel a little bit unpolished. Like, I'm not exactly sure why the person playing White Whale here keeps highlighting the text box, but it seems like the text doesn't appear unless he actually does that. Keep in mind, Scott was making his own games on his own. There was no team, it was just him. He was a one-man show. So a single one of these games would take him 2 years to commit to. Notably, one of the last games he would make before Five Nights at Freddy's was Chipper & Sons Lumber Company. Chipper & Sons is a point-and-click adventure where you play as an anthropomorphic beaver and grow trees, which you later chomp down for money and blueprints. It's a very relaxed style of game, and the backgrounds are beautifully drawn. However, within a day of the trailer being up on the Steam Greenlight page, it was taken down by Scott. This game was received with harsh criticism, mainly for its character design aesthetic, as well as how the characters in general interacted with the world around them. One of the most notable critics of the title is probably Jim Sterling of the Jimquisition. Jimquisition in his video completely roasts the game. It's not so much a criticism as it is straight out murder.
This trailer was on Steam Greenlight yesterday, and apparently within a day was taken down by the maker, and it's too horrifying not to show. And that thing looks like it's gonna kill your children. You may notice the dead, terrifying, soulless eyes of the background characters. I'm going to fuck your dog.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Roasts it like a Christmas turkey. There is one silver lining to the absolute roast of a review though. Jim would mention that the beavers looked horrifying, unintentionally scary, and robotic. Honestly, I can't really disagree with Jim where that's concerned. Despite my feelings over having said it with your whole chest on YouTube in a video, you'll see why this is a silver lining fairly shortly though. Although you can probably already guess where this whole criticism is going. However, for the moment, these words cut deep for Scott, who was beginning to feel the pressure of his lack of success. It was at this time that Scott nearly gave up. In an interview with Geeks Under Grace, he would reveal that around this time he began to experience suicidal ideation and depression, as well as a crisis of faith. All these things would stem from his games being financial failures. Up until now, he made around a dozen games, none of which really took off. For Scott, making games was far bigger than just a job. He believed God wanted him to make video games. And the harsh reality of the indie market at the time meant that either his games simply were not good enough or there was no demand for such a title. For him, it was a question of his purpose in life. So understandably, he became discouraged when he realized that all the time he had put in had been for nothing. This is where I connected with Scott's story. The feeling of belonging to something, but it never working out. No matter how much work you put in, how much effort you apply, that bitterness that you couldn't quite hack it, despite your best efforts. It's a feeling of having wasted your time completely, that you provided nothing of value because nobody thought it was valuable. At the end of the day, people decide what's important to them and what they want to enjoy, and sometimes that's just not what you've made. Needless to say, this left Scott heartbroken. Scott would admit to his doctors the mental health crisis that he was facing, and meanwhile, he would look for another career to continue providing for his family. His life insurance company would get wind of his suicidal thoughts and canceled his life insurance policy. Scott says in an interview with Geeks Under Grace, "It was at that point I realized that not only did my life have no value, but now even my death had no value." And just like that, Scott decided to give up. But wait, a cog started to turn in Scott's head. He remembered the harsh criticism he received from the design of Chipper and Sons. Scary beavers, robotic looking. Scott had decided, instead of committing years to a single game, to try and make a much smaller, more robust experience. He had settled on making a horror game for a change of pace, instead of something inspired by his fate. He would design the first character, named Freddy. The designs for Chica and Bonnie would come later. He decided the design for his antagonists to be animatronics. Little by little, he would work on it, get his kids to beta test it, test out the AI. Bonnie was said to be the one he found scariest, and I can't really blame him. I mean, look at this thing, it's absolutely terrifying. But it was all starting to come together for him. A brand new experience he had never made before. He opted to keep the horror game relatively family friendly, so that meant no gore, no blood, no guts, generally no depictions of violence. We pretty much only know what the animatronics do to you through Phone Guy in the beginning. This time, there would be no work in for his faith. He was laser focused on just providing a good horror experience. Finally, it was finished, and it was time to release it. He first released it on the platform IndieDB, where it would become popular among users. Then, he released it to Desera, where the game would become the top-selling game for the week of August the 18th, 2014. With all this success, Scott still had no idea how big his little game would become. Scott would then release Five Nights at Freddy's on Steam 2 days later, where the game would continue to skyrocket in popularity as the YouTube search volume would also increase to reflect this. See, what Scott perhaps didn't know was that it was at this exact moment in time that many of the pioneers in the Let's Play genre of videos were laser focused on exactly his kind of game. See, this is where indie gaming would take front stage and center on YouTube. And Five Nights at Freddy's was released at just the right time. Markiplier and CoreyxKenshin would upload theirs first on August 12th, 2014. Jacksepticeye would upload his on August 15th, and PewDiePie would upload his just a week later on August the 22nd of 2014. For the first time in his life, Scott had made a successful video game. And just like that, his life was changed forever. We're going to look at what makes Five Nights at Freddy's such a unique horror experience. But it's imperative that first I share with you my history with the game. For many years, I had only heard whispers of Five Nights at Freddy's. Something about killer animatronics and a pizza parlor, some guy named Henry and dead kids. I wasn't really into Let's Play content during the 2010s. I just figured if I would watch someone play video games, I might as well just play them myself. So I didn't get the secondhand exposure that a lot of other people received. On top of that, the aesthetic seemed, I don't know, silly to me. I mean, a possessed Chuck E. Cheese really didn't seem all that frightening when I was busy watching Ghostface violently trip during every single chase he has. But this year, a friend of mine bought the game for me and insisted that I play it on stream. So I did, and within the first 10 minutes, I understood just how wrong I had been. I thought it was a game only a kid would find scary. A big, strong, manly man like me? Come on, no way I'd get freaked out. Right? Shit, you piece of you fox I spent the whole time being paranoid of this little freak fox, and then out of nowhere, just, oh, hey, by the way, Snail, go yourself, I'm here. The game disarms you in several ways before it even shows its fangs. Firstly, you're stationary. You have very little agency in what your character does other than checking cameras, closing doors, and switching lights. This lack of agency already sets you up with a feeling of hopelessness. However, this isn't immediately obvious either, since first, the game has you listen to a disinterested supervisor tell you all about the dangers and trials you'll face during your time as a security guard. He very casually glosses over the consequences of being caught by the animatronics, addressing them almost the same way you'd address a cat for someone who's house sitting.
So just be aware, the characters do tend to wander a bit. They're left in some kind of...
In the beginning, you have zero information to go off of, except that there are spooky robots trying to kill you, and your only defense against them, and the only way you win the night, is by surviving until 6 a.m. What does surviving mean? Well, it means don't let the power run out and don't get caught by the robots. Seems simple, right? No, it's not. There's a specific lack of hand-holding that makes this scenario extremely terrifying, especially if you're going in blind like I did. You have no idea what to expect, what to listen for, and what to pay attention to. You have no idea that your camera really matters if you keep it on Foxy or Freddy. On my first night, I ran out of power because I didn't realize that keeping the cameras open drains your power faster. Yeah, I got punished for it. Aside from the minimal gameplay, the game makes extensive use of your other senses, in exchange for a lack of visual stimuli. Seeing things in this game is not nearly as important as hearing things, and you will hear a lot of things. You'll hear Bonnie casually humming as he roams around, footsteps echoing through the hallway, Chica happily rummaging through trash for a late night snack. If you're lucky, you'll hear Foxy before you see him. You will never hear Freddy coming though. At least not until the power goes out. And if you do happen to catch one of these little guys just before they stuff you into the most dangerous mascot outfit ever designed, you have a very limited amount of time to react. The most incredible moment of my playthrough for me was when I realized just how little the game needs to do to scare you effectively. It's a really small game. There are only a few static assets, and aside from that, most of the fear of the game is in the atmosphere. I'm sorry. Besides that, there's something so uncanny valley about the animatronic design, something so off, but technically correct, and I can't quite put it into words. I think personally it's the combination of teeth and eyes being so human-like provides a certain sense of unease when you're looking at them. It's like your brain is registering it as a human being before doubling back and being like... If If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate that. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. It's free, won't cost you a dime, I promise, I swear. And it helps me walk in Scott's shoes. Plus, it helps you keep up to date with my videos, where I explore media and subjects because I overanalyze absolutely everything. Honestly, this video has been my favorite to make so far, and I really hope you enjoyed it if you made it all the way to this point. Until next time, I'm Snail, take care, brush your hair, and peace.